Mayor, I think you can start.
Yeah, we can start. Yeah, okay. So, hello everybody. It's a bit weird to be far away and see you through the Zoom. But we have, in the last 2 years, we have experienced a lot of accurate events. So, I will start and then we'll continue as the plan is right down to you. 15 years ago, Yata Benkin had published an anthology edited by Professor Yuval Dror, titled Communal Groups in Israel. This anthology was focused on two kinds of cooperative intentional communities: urban kibbutzes and movements of Zionist socialist youth movements graduates. 15 years later, nowadays, Yata Benkin is about to publish a new volume about Israeli intentional communities, edited by Dr. Orna Shemer, who I'll present later, and myself. This new anthology holds three main objectives. The first is to bring an updated understanding of intentional communities, their changing communal and missionary characteristics. When Professor Doron started to work on the first anthology, there was a big debate in Yata Benkin Research Board. While the historians thought it was then too early to write about this young social phenomena, the sociologists insisted that there is a necessity to look at this social phenomena while it's growing and developing. There was no argument between those scholars parties about the need to handle another research in the future. Well, the future has arrived, and I assume it arrived too soon than expected. The second objective of this new anthology is to broaden the landscape of the communities we are looking at. While the first book was focused, as I said before, only in cooperative communities, in this book, we had included other types of intentional communities, such as urban non-cooperative communes, cultural communities, student villages, local youngsters communities, etc. In Israel, there are about 280 active intentional communities in 19 localities spread all over the country, and especially in social periphery areas. We try to cover in this book various types of communities, but I must admit that we haven't succeeded to cover all of them, which means there's a need for a third book. Paz, I think you are in the audience, so it's for you. The third objective sits on the uniqueness of the Israeli intentional communities, which is their strong connection and influence on the local communities in which they are living in, and on the Israel society in general. We put the communes, social activism, and their efforts to promote social change in the center of the interest of the book chapters. When we are talking about social change in the book, we refer to three variants: communal activism, educational activism, and political activism. To sum up the three books' objectives, we are talking about updates research, broaden types of communities, and focusing on social activism and change. In this session, we'll meet three of the book writers that will introduce their chapters. Without further ado, I'm happy to introduce the first speaker. Orna Shemer, that I said that she is co-editing of the book, is a faculty member at the School of Social Work at the Hebrew University, researcher and a member of a research board at Yata Benkin. She is a community social worker Her areas of research and activity are concentrated in communities and organizations, participatory processes, and practices in cultural context. And Orna will talk, her lecture is Overseas Social Change, Intentional Communities Initiative, the International School of Peace for Refugees in Lesbos. Orna, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear now?
Now you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
So thank you, Neil. I will introduce the research that happens in the Doron about the activities of the national communities outside of Israel. When I say Shemer, I'm going to the youth movement, and actually I will the others people that live in international communities which are finished the youth movement and stay in the movement. So in February, in 2017, members of the adults movement of Shemer and the Agile movement in our Israeli youth autonomous Arab division using the Shemer movement in collaboration with the Humanitarian Aid Organization of Time. The island Lesbos, where we founded the international on the island. The model they created is country-oriented and works in collaboration with the local refugee community. The teachers of the school are accepted refugees on the island, and together with the members of the international communities, they operated the school in March this year for about 5 years. The phenomenon of international communities around the world is mostly global, because they seek to create meaning for the members of the change around them. In Israel, the mission of the communities is particularly in the areas of education, welfare, and the social and military of Israel, and the economy and lifestyle are part of the social ideas that communities want to convey to their environment. While the context of the Israeli society shaped the faces of the communities and formed the ground for their mission, the invitation to a mission that takes place outside the borders of Israel in a foreign reality and in another country, with people from different religions and countries, is unique and arousing curiosity. The Shemer movement chose not to stand among the global humanitarian and practical, and the initiative to the informal education group familiar with them from their experience in Israel, with refugee children staying in Lesbos as a transit station in their lives with unique and innovative international communities. A similar act of humanitarian aid took place in 1999. The initiative of the Youth Movement Council, which organized 40 aid delegations to the National Council in the possible region of the Israel. The assistance lasted for several months, during which members of the youth movement worked with children and youth after school hours in the refugee camp. While the humanitarian activity in Kosovo was episodic, the establishment of a school in Lesbos by the movement was initiated in the ongoing work in the global space. Today, activity in this spirit is also taking place in Ukraine. These are the photos that I took 2 months ago. In May, I went to coordinate the activities of the psychosocial team and the Ukrainian border in the town of Mishol in Poland. In Lesbos, the place where we operated, the Shemer movement has been operating for several months. Every day, they monitor from morning till evening educational and social activities for the children. They pass through this place on their way to the countries in which they will live. In the 2 weeks I have been there, I have seen a significant activities, how their activities are significant. Not only actual pay attention to children who will suddenly stop their lives and are in the drama of moving elsewhere, but also to parents who could leave the children the experience and responsible hands of members for the movement. This activity continues these days and even expanding with more summer programs. I will present you the report written in an internal document for those intentional communities about Lesbos. The civil war in Syria has led us, members of the Shemer movement, to do the wrong things. After months of challenging instruction, we found ourselves on a frontier that took its own life and took us on path that many of us didn't think we would go to. What started as a fundraising campaign, practically through 3 months of activity, was become without a swearing school for children on the island of Lesbos. More than 3,000 people from past weeks, dates in the past 2 years. From a branch people who want to do anything in founders, the right to talk about the United States every day from the side. The civil war has been ongoing in Syria since 2011 and led to a large movement of refugees and asylum seekers who fled the war in search of a safe place outside the country. As a result, about 1.5 million asylum seekers immigrated to Europe. In addition, the immigration movement also resulted in difficult war in Iraq and Iran, groups that have victims of operation. Afghans who fled the terror of the Taliban region, and refugees from Africa, whose immigration was related to poor living conditions due to the environmental factor and ethnic political struggles in their countries. The Greek island of Lesbos, located very, very close to the west coast of Turkey, has become a favorite destination. Destinations in which next the refugees have been smuggled along the Balkan route between the Turkish shore and the island shores. A large proportion of the refugees in the past live in extreme poverty and face food insecurity, physical living conditions in the past, lack of sanitary conditions, and exposure to violent environment. The age of about half of the refugees is less than 18, when many of the children known as the last generation who know and have not started for years in educational setting on a regular basis as a result of wars and struggles in both countries. Children are particularly vulnerable in situations of refugee and displacement, especially when leaving the country of origin as a result of circumstances as war and terrorism. The International School of Peace that has been initiated by the Mishol members is bounded by a colorful fence and it's separated from the community center. The physical center of the school was built in full cooperation with the refugee communities from the past, using wooden structures that were adapted to be classrooms and painted with children colors to conceal in their quarters. The school space is controlled by the various branches spoken in the past in order to allow a sense of home and stability alongside modularity. In the reality of the lives of the refugee children on the island, there is no other regular education system. Therefore, the education project is created as a combination of complementary elements within the core of the education. The movement has been made as an adaptation to the reality in response to the refugee crisis. We talk about the findings from our research. The interview with the members of the communities were in Lesbos. raise a number of aspects and adds to the connection that we see between him and members of the international communities and the unique mission in Lesbos. I will have a three pieces that express this connection. The first one is the implementation of the school peace model.
Pardon me, we may have an audio problem. I'm not seeing the subtitles. Yeah, they're on, or maybe, okay, go ahead. We're okay.
The export of the ideological ideas, principles, and actions and practices of nationality from the local communities world to the international school of this in Lesbos is expressing the message, principles, organizational structure.
Just 10 minutes
The
ago.
interview is emphasizing the message, the way of working at Lesbos are no different from those forward to operate and even raise similar concerns. However, it appears that the context in which they work is directly seeing Lesbos raise the intensity of emotion and raises questions and dilemmas more dramatically and intensely. In terms of organization of the project, there is the graduate of the view of the future of laws and what in partnership and in the multicultural and dense arena in which the school operates, its founders have chosen to emphasize its being a school of peace. And the skills of mediation, conversation, and involvement are cornerstone. Many of the school's principles can learn from their references and example of the teaching structure, which is characterized by collaborative, dialogical, and multicultural. Although these collaborative principles were foreign to many teachers, they were adopted and stimulated in the world movement. At the same time, the members of the intentional communities emphasized the attachment required in the integration of the principles of integration. For example, Shai describes those activities to warm the atmosphere at the beginning of establishing the sensitivity to cultural values, which is the starting of the future. Every teacher meeting that is in 5 languages starts with the game, and the teacher really liked it. I was shocked. They were in the class. It was crazy. And then while in culture, now a man, woman, and sensitivity. What is allowed and what is forbidden. The sensitivity was there. Another method is individual and group reflexive processing, which is done as part of the dialogue at school. Reflexivity is part of the weekly meeting, and we also practice spontaneity on daily classes as part of the natural part of the conversation that exists between community members and between their partners. One, for example, showed that this type of discourse had human significance for him, as well as the ability to outcome more of the humanitarian relationship than what happens in other educational systems. So it would sit a lot. We would sit a lot at the end of the day and talk about the experience. It's a sense of the shared destiny, and it's in very environment. And it's related to the movement. Regarding to the encounter, the ability to understand, to be empathic, to feel the situation they are in. The fact that it was collaborative task allowed it not to be like a therapist-patient relationship, but we are partners, and we are partners who go through something together, and in doing so, they also took an educated position in a commitment to the students, children, and teachers in my position, on the one hand to them, and on the other to them. The content of the school indicates that it is indeed school of peace. The educators that educates for the humanistic values of personal growth and solidarity between peoples. The dialogue is presented We it as an alternative to violence. All of these are part of the school in a system of non-formal education that allows for more choice and adjustment of content and less focus on achievement. The school emphasizes the children's experience rather than the educational content. While in Israel, the uniqueness as a youth movement is a critical education, in Lesbos, they focus on allowing children to experience traumatic and safe experiences of childhood and adolescence, which have room for developing empathic attitude and respect for others. Explain to the child the critical thinking of why he is a refugee, he will go. It does not concern him. He needs to experience an experience of use, a childhood experience. Here you play and are expected to be children. The second point of the research is the collaborative lifestyle in Lesbos. The members of the communities copied to Lesbos the cooperative way of life. In the apartment they rent in a nearby town where they live together. Living together as a company is perceived as a way of life that influenced the education model of this school. The lifestyle apartment is communal, economically, socially, in terms of sharing the task conditions. That means that they live on a common budget that everyone uses according to their needs. Special expenses are discussed together and decided by mutual consent. Socially, they live as a group, which is an emotional, ideological, and social space. They say that together they see their place as a safe place to consult about their actions and share their feelings. They feel mutual commitment between them, and functionally they share the task of housekeeping and cleaning and food. Community members are aware of the difficulty that this paragraph raises, that such relationships need time and conditions to be successful, both among themselves and among partners who are not used to living in this lifestyle, like volunteers who help them but are not part of the international communities. We are used to living in the home and with a family life, but not all people live in the home. There are some of our things that were taken for granted like the common water. For us, it is true. Say amount, and I will use. At first, they did not take money for the water. This is not natural behavior. But we talk about the powers that are not in the national communities. Unlike the ongoing process in Israel that allowed for a time of qualification and adjustment in Lesbos, the intensity of life compressed in a month and a half. And the experience in the past produces an accelerated process that rapid adaptation to school work. The members of the communities get examples of responsibility, brotherhood, and mutual closeness created between them as a result of living close to each other. We guarantee each other and take care of each other. It's very overwhelming experience. It constantly living together, and without it, it was different. It shapes what happens at school because it is a place to get out and to return to. And it is especially important when dealing with meaningful content. It shapes the experience, allows a safe place as the movement is anchored in an uncertain reality. The last point is the movement as an ideological organizational infrastructure. The connection to the nationality movement came up as the main topic throughout the interviews with the members of the communities. As graduates of the movement, the mission in Lesbos implements for the members of the communities a quick and powerful way to fulfill the mission. They fill the movement with a secure infrastructure for them. We have a foundation that we belong to and that we need to see us. It is something very strong, that there is a connection and there is a place to return to. Members of the community describe the work as directed by the cultural adaptation to the complex situation of immigration and instability. They adapt themselves sensitivity and professionality with accurate content and act relevant to the situation. That is why we do not emphasize what set them apart in the movement, but what creates the bridge, as Inanna explains. We do not go with the blue shirt in Lesbos. It can keep us away, and we came to make connection. The blue shirt is the uniform of the national city. The collective narrative of the members of the communities indicates that the result of the arena in Lesbos is new and challenging for them. They feel that the values and principles they have outlined are rooted in the values of the movement. The intense dealing with everyday situations go against the reality that the Westland space in a meeting where there is a human pain and intense national meeting is a kind of extreme arena for examining the ideological cornerstone of the reality. In conclusion, the initiative of the communities in Israel to operate overseas in the International School of Peace and its continuing leadership despite the challenges proves that the course of action established over the years in the movement in Israel is sustainable and can be improved even in more extreme situations. The unique educational enterprise under the condition in which it operates and for the purpose for which it operates is perceived as a fulfillment of the task and is providing itself once again these days in the fund. It seems that this initiative opens doors to other significant global activity. It gives an opportunity for the intentional communities to realize the vision in new and dramatic spaces and thus to increase the power of the movements. It seems worthwhile to continue to think about more cross-border activities, including collaborations between international communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Orna. If there is a question from the audience to Orna, so you can please ask directly. If there's no question, so we'll.
We have one question.
Excuse me.
Well, thank you. One comment is because it's very exciting for me. As a member of Shemer, as my position in Bet Bell, and nowadays because I now mentioned the activity in Ukraine. So nowadays there is a cooperation of the world of Shemer, not the Israeli Shemer, with the one of the lecturers in the Doron in the master of I don't know the English name of this job, but not special education, something like special education, and because they had to have because of this activity, they organized and together a special framework, books and notebooks for the Ukrainian mothers that left alone with their children. And you see Alon will have a lecture about this in the conference at September, about this special activity that just lecture in the Bear saw this activity and just wanted to help because of their professional abilities, and together the academic figures and the youth movement create a wonderful activity that will start operate really soon. So this is an academic conference on reality altogether. So it was so exciting to me that you talk about Ukraine as well. I must make this comment.
Thank you, Alon.
We have time to ask. You have time to another question, or you want to move up to the next speaker?
I don't understand.
We have time to answer another question or not?
No, there's a time for another short question.
Okay. To look for the balance between empathy and criticism. You say that it's very nice, but I mean now it's closed. And that problem, maybe you can say not all what is just good in it's wonderful and important project, but what is the problem that you found and researched?
When you are using the microphone, please don't put it too close to your mouth, because we can't understand what you're saying.
There were 2 fires in Lesbos, in the camps, and after that, the school continued.
School continue to operate, and then after that it's finished. I really don't know why it's a date it's finished, but in the book that we wrote, I asked questions about the cultural sensitivity, about ask questions about the interaction between the aid organization and what is the space for each organization and what about this school. But I think it's really a good project, and it has more positive actions than dilemmas.
Okay, thank you very much. We now go to the next lecture. Dr. Doron Timor is a researcher at Yad Benkin and a lecturer in the Department of Education and Sociology at the Israeli Open University in Israel. He's a member of the urban kibbutz Mifras in Haifa, which is part of the Israeli Circle of Communes. And Doron is talking about intentional communities and the late waves of the COVID-19 pandemic. Doron, please.
Thank you. Firstly, I need permission to share screen, if it's possible. Who can give me?
I have to give permission. Yeah, make it close.
Make it go
Your host down.
I will show you. I will show you. This one. Yes. Okay. Go. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to share with you a few thoughts from the research that would be published in the book. My title is Intentional Communities and the Late Waves of the COVID-19 Pandemic, and I gave the title a few months ago, and now I think that the meaning late waves, it's okay. It's kind of okay. I need to find a new meaning because we have a lot of waves in this pandemic. Anyway, this research supported by the Yaakov Oved Fellowship, and I want to thank Professor Oved and the committee for this fellowship. Okay, so I'll start with this advertisement. On April 2020, a short letter published by the Foundation for Intentional Communities, the FIC, with the title, "Are you considering joining or starting an intentional community now more than ever?" In this letter, the FIC's leaders advise people to cooperate and enjoy the advantages of community life. you are not alone. In the weeks since the pandemic, we have seen a sharp uptick in people searching for off-grid communities with opening 2020. So it was more than 2 years ago, but I think that these questions are very important still now. And I want to show you a few findings from my research. So before I start, I can tell you that this paper based on ongoing research about intentional communities in times of the crisis. On one hand, communities activity based on the values of collectiveness, deeply affected by the social distancing policy imposed by many governments around the world to stop the COVID-19 propagation in any way since the beginning of the pandemic. On the other hand, communities used the cooperative tools to challenge isolation and the economic crisis occurred during the pandemic. Many of them participated in communal and political activities. These events occurred in new models of cooperative living created in the early 21st century in many places around the world based on the values of cooperation and solidarity. And in this research, I try to understand the way that these cooperative tools help the intentional communities to challenge with the pandemic. So in this conference, I think that I don't need to start with a brief background about communities and intentional community. Anyway, I want to show you the definition of Tim Miller about intentional communities. Includes a shared vision, physical proximity of residents, financial or material sharing, and membership of at least 5 adults who are not all related by blood or marriage. This is his definition. And I'm talking about, as you know, communes with full economic sharing, co-housing, eco-villages, spiritual and religious communities, kibbutzim, and kibbutz of educators, kibbutzei mechanchim in Israel as well. So the pandemic finds the communities in the time of increasing and creation of new paths of community lives. This international crisis challenges many communities' daily lives, but makes values of solidarity and cooperation most attractive for many decades. My research was based on content analysis of many articles and posts published by members of intentional communities worldwide, virtual events that I participated in and watched later, alongside interviews with few community members. One of this project's problems is that we don't have the right perspective on these events as an ongoing research. We can only guess how the pandemic will affect society in general and the community specifically. Anyway, I would like to share 3 themes from this research organized by in 3 circles. All of them focus on significant tensions with lengthy background in the history of the communal movement. The first one is the daily life perspective, the obvious circle. The community is an attractive solution to the pandemic, but affected by all the social distancing policy, making the everyday communal life harder. The second circle, the second perspective is the local one, the big tension in the history of the communal movement between separation and integration in the public sphere. And the third one is the international perspective, which is very important, especially in this kind of conference. We talk about communities in times of change and communities as a solution to a big crisis and big international crisis. And I'll try to put a few questions for the conclusion of my paper and my talk in the end of this lecture. So I'll start with few examples. I have many examples, but we can see part of them. The daily life perspective focuses on the tension between the fact that the community is an attractive solution to the pandemic and the fact that all the policies made the communal daily life harder than ever. For example, you can see the quote from Deborah Altus' work about co-housing members from United States. If the pandemic had to happen, this is the best place for it to happen. Another one, all of the social events have continued, often in new forms, sometimes virtually, and many other examples. This is another example for the daily life solutions from Kibbutz of Educators, part of the Dror Israel movement, one of the תנועות בוגרים, adults movements in Israel. Thanks to our communal life, we have created an alternative activity for children, even in difficult times of the COVID crisis. They have meaningful educational meetings, and on healthy and quiet days, I'm a kindergarten teacher, In fact, I continued with them even during the crisis when we defined ourselves as a permanent capsule. If you remember the beginning of the pandemic in Israel and other places, but in Israel, I know that everybody talked about capsules, the group that can meet even in the hardest day of the pandemic. I knew that children needed to be created an island of sanity in a strange reality that lasted a long time. It gave them sense of meaning in this period, and later on, she talked about the meaning for her of this activity. So, about and otherwise, on the other hand, we can talk about a co-housing member from Denmark that wrote that eating together has been suspended. Co-housing member from Australia that told me that I'm living in our community for 35 years since I finished my BA. We have 50 members in our community, many of them with a medical problem. We suspended our communal meals, and it's very weird and hard for me. So it's kind of different reactions. And a member of Kibbutz of Educators in Israel, I think that many of you know him. I spent half of my life removing my front door intentionally, hinge by hinge. Now I need to put it back on. I haven't got a clue where to find it. And even when I do, I don't even know which way up it goes. So we have many kinds of reactions in the daily life perspective. Okay, here we can see the advertisement of the kibbutz movement about the members or the children of the members of the kibbutz that wanted to come back to the kibbutz in the first weeks or months of the pandemic. You can see this advertisement in context of the attractiveness of the kibbutz to its young generation, which became an important factor a few years ago as a solution to accommodation problems in new neighborhoods called Archavot. In contrast to the attitude of many kibbutz young members in the past who left the kibbutz, this crisis found the kibbutz movement as a much more attractive to its youth. And you can see the call to the members of the kibbutz back home to the safe place. The kibbutz is the safe place now in this pandemic, and make sure all the boys and girls that come back as refugees to the kibbutz, no, not really refugees, it's not politically correct, but yes, you know, as you understand, make sure they feel part of the community. So it's very interesting how the pandemic changed the path of this movement. Okay, I have many more examples. I want to conclude this part about the daily life perspective. So we can see the solidarity, humanity, new ways for cooperation. This is the place to be from one hand, and the other hand, meeting suspended, we've never taken in century of community living, daily life has changed dramatically, close the door. So this is the big tension in this survey. The other one is the local perspective. Historically, one of the most significant conflicts in the communal movement is the tension between separation and integration in the public sphere. Since the utopian communes via spiritual communities, communities try to find the best way to lead society on the one hand and to build an alternative approach of daily life based on cooperative values. The new generation of intentional communities, as you know, participates in the global and local political arena, but the pandemic's challenge had sharpened this conflict. So in many communities, we can see new protocols for community daily lives. Here's an example from co-housing, I think it's co-housing, yes, from Oakland, California. New protocols and technology tools replace meetings. Yeah, let's see, I talk with you by Zoom, yes. And the big question in this perspective is what will be the long-term impact of the new protocol, of the new protocols and hierarchy in the daily life. So I don't have a very good answer for this question, but it's a very important question that we need to ask on. I don't know, a few years in the future. In the political arena, Orna talked about the activities in Ukraine and other places, and we can see many activities around the world. This is an online workshop about activism in the beginning of this pandemic. Many humanitarian activities. This is an example from the Bureau of movement from Great Britain. I think they created masks for people. I don't remember the specific activity, and the participation in the big protests in the United States and around the world, especially in the Black Lives Matter in the States. And in Israel, you can see humanitarian activities and the participation of many members of the communes of intentional communities in the protest against the Netanyahu regime for the last elections and the election before the last election. And as you know, we have many elections every year, 1 or 2 elections in Israel. So I want to move for the last 5 minutes to the last point, to the international perspective. I have many other examples, but I think that I show you enough examples to understand this phenomena. So the big question in that field is how communal movements react to the update crisis and finds a new path of community lives. We look at the significant changes in the global communal movement. Even before the global pandemic, yes, intentional communities were in the era of increasing numbers and change. After a few decades of struggle since the 80s and the 90s, when communal values seen as irrelevant to the free capitalist society, it seems that in many places around the world, people are looking for these values. And the COVID crisis assured this hypothesis. The big question in the field is how the communal movement reacts to the update crisis and finds new path for community lives. We look at the significant change in the global communal movement from collectivist, idealistic, and holistic movements via dismantling, building, and redesigning and surviving to creating new diverse models of full and partial cooperation, both hybrid and radical. 3 years ago, this book, you can see in this slide, was published by Yata Benkin and Yadi Ar 4 years ago, actually, yes, in 2018. Published by Yata Benkin and Yadi Ari, another research center of the kibbutz movement, and created a public discussion in the Israeli communal movement. The title of this book, edited by Menachem Topel and Doron, was The Communal Challenge. It deals with the challenges of the kibbutz movement in time of corporatization. So from the challenge of the cooperation framework, we can see the negation of dichotomies between an ideal cooperative intentional community and renewable, not really and capitalist community. An essential factor in this change is the discourse change based on the collapse of the framework of them and us. The more hybrid point of view that I found in my research helps the intentional community overcome the crisis and be better alternative to everyday lives, especially in this chaotic period. So social media became one of the key factors of these solutions to the problems occurred in the pandemic. I have few more questions, and I want to put it for the discussion. One of them is a quote that I found in the book about the kibbutz. To survive as a cooperative, you have to innovate all the time, and I think in this pandemic we can see many solutions and many activities that create more and more a path of solidarity and collectiveness. The question of the cooperative values stand in test and important tools in dealing with the crisis, and the question of solidarity, how will the value experience and as a communal as an intentional community members, this is a very interesting and important question for the future, not only in the perspective of the COVID and the other pandemics that will come in the future. So where the communal discourse is dealing with the crisis located, for the last question, and the most important thing is to be thank you and be healthy, very important. So Nir, if we can, okay, so I'll finish this share. Thank you very much, and if you want, I can put the questions again.
Thank you, Doron. And if someone has a question or a remark directed to Doron, you're invited. Okay. Nobody, I can't see, but I assume nobody. Okay. Alon, please. But I remind you to
take it back. Now, you well? It's okay now?
I think that it would be better if you will sit close to Orna and not in front of
the microphone is okay. Just put it away from your mouth.
Yeah, okay.
We can hear. We will hear it good.
Can you hear me well now?
Even far.
Oh, if I take it far, is it okay? One, two, three.
Yeah. Now it's good.
Doron, thank you, and I would like to ask you if you see in your research that they have more power to communities that belong to community and other communities. For example, the kibbutzim movement influence in the pandemic situation and help a small community, in the kibbutzim. So if you compare it to other communities in the world, maybe we can find the kind of conclusion that if you don't you are not living single community, but the community belong to a movement that can shape and help, and maybe the more mutual responsibility is make it a key factor that could help such crisis in the future.
Yeah, I found many examples for this interpretation. I didn't talk about it in this lecture because I try to focus on issues from the chapter from the book, which focus in intentional communities, and especially in a younger community than the older, the communes or the kibbutzim with many old old members. Even in Israel and in other places around the world, the movements of communes were very important in the in solidarity between communes. I participated in many meetings of and the FIC and the ICSA as well. So many meetings that people from all over the world shared their point of view, and even more practically. For example, in the Bruderhof community in the south of England, they had connections with other communities in that area. And yes, the movement is very important in this crisis, and it depends, how close, how the connections between communes in every movement are strong.
Thank you. Let's move to Vered, and if we will have another, if we have time in the end, so we will open a short discussion. So we are now moving to the third presentation of Vered Haas. Vered is an independent researcher and program evaluator of various social and educational initiatives, member of Amiad, a small kibbutz in the north of Israel, researcher in the field of ideological education, and specializes in non-formal and informal education through youth movements and communities. And Vered's lecture is Settle Down but Carry On Fighting, Revisiting Mishol, Intentional Community after 12 years. Vered, please.
Hi, can I share? Can I share my screen, please?
One
moment.
That was the wrong person.
This one. Yes. You don't have any your screen?
Now you can.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just doing the presentation mode. Okay, so my lecture, we already heard a lot today about the activities that the intentional communities and the Tnuat Bogrim are taking. And as Neil introduced, my research span is about 12 years, a bit more than that. And I will focus on the changes that happen over time in the values and activities. I started the research as part of my thesis, and I researched kibbutz Mishol in North Galil, in the north of Israel. The first time I collected the material was between 2006 and 2008, and I read a lot, and I did like interviews, follow-up questions and observations. And then especially for the books, I went back to the same people. People are in similar position in the same kibbutz, and asked them again the same question I did for my thesis. The question focused mainly about their values and how they educate themselves and the different circles around them for these values. I will show you also my findings. The first finding that is very, very clear is that the group that I research have very strong and clear values, and they stem from 3 different spheres: cultural Judaism, from Oranim, Midreshet Oranim, Zionist socialism from the second Aliyah, and socialism, mainly utopic socialism and so on. From these 3 spheres, they have very strong tendencies for social activities and to get up and change the world, both tikkun olam, which means changing everything around me, outside me, and trying to do it better for everybody, and tikkun adam, which focus inside, getting myself to be a better person, to be a better partner, a better friend, a better parent, because in their point of view, in their worldview, that's how you change the world. If you can't really help others if you are not in a good place yourself. And from the combination of these, you get a very strong tendency to agshama, do like social activism that is based on ideology. We saw before both in a lot in what Orna showed, the same kind of things that my group is doing, so we're not going to go for that. I'm sure you can't read that, so I will read you some of the central values that I found. The first thing that it is important for all of I think what we call the blue movements is the group, the place of the group itself, the group of people in a similar age, and working a lot as a group, my relationship inside the group. And one of the main ways they're doing it is through conversation, which comes as a value by himself. Autonomy and authenticity for the self, to really be myself. Responsibility for others and for myself. Lifelong learning, sharing in the Hebrew words, like in the Hebrew meaning of shituf. So it doesn't only mean sharing my emotion, but also sharing my possessions and my space and so on. And acceptance, which I couldn't find a better word for that, is akafa, Buberian way of accepting the other by it's good, is bad, and all of the different sides. Critical thinking and humanitarian values. You can see that some of those values come very clearly from socialism, like the critical thinking and the financial sharing, and some values are quite Jewish values, like the importance of the group and the conversation and the lifelong learning. The second finding that I found is that the same values will lead to slightly different but similar action depending on the context. So they will not behave what they can do and the way they do things inside the group. The peer group will not be the same way they behave to the general public. And we can see in this graph or figure that the different circles that I dealt with, there was the self and how they educate themselves, the group, the kibbutz, the movement, formal education in the country. And I will show you just a minute. They have I'm not sure if the share changed. Did the share change or is it still on my presentation?
No, it's still your representation. We can't see
Okay,
it.
so I will share it again. Tikkun is the organization. You can see from the name of the organization the importance that they give to Tikkun for changing it for the better. They have, like, you can see on the site himself the amount of different activities that they are taking in formal education, non-formal education, inside the town, outside the country for refugees, and so on. So all of those different circles come, you can see that how they happen in daily life. I'm going back to my presentation. Okay. During time, the values stay the same, but the social actions and the circles themselves changed a little bit. The main changes that took place is from the individual. I'm going through the orders of the circles. If we start with the individual, they got the self-fulfillment became much more important. People can do what they need to fulfill themselves. If they need to go and study and be a social worker or be the head of another movement, they can still be part of the kibbutz, and they can, as long as they also give their money to the kibbutz and deal with something that they feel helps society as a whole. We're going to see now, I have to stop sharing and share again. We're going to see now Naama, which is one of the women that is from the group research, and you can see in the photo that she's sitting with religious women in Jerusalem. Naama is working as a doula and as a breastfeeding expert, and she's helping women before birth, during birth, and after birth, and she feels it's her destination, it's her way of helping women. And she also works a lot with women that have businesses, small businesses, in all that, helping other women. And now she teaches them how to have like a business plan and a business ideas and how to promote themselves on social media. And it's her way of making change in her the surroundings. And the fact that the group allows that and respect Naama's choice of life is very unique. Sorry, I just need to share in the right way. It's very unique to them. So it got lost a bit. I'm getting back to it. The group that was extremely important in 2006 and 2008, the group I researched fell apart. Around 2010, 2012, they each went to his own way. A lot of them stayed in the kibbutz, but the group itself is broken. Some of them left, some of them joined other groups inside Mishol, but that importance that the group had as a main tool for Tikkun is slightly less in the whole kibbutz, not just for that one group. I think that was an extreme case of the group falling apart. Most of the groups are still working, but it takes secondary place to the kibbutz and to the family life. The family unit, as you can see in the photo, there's a lot of kids, and the family units are important, and they will do group activities many times by the age of their kids, and not just, or they all kibbutz together and not just the group. The kibbutz is becoming, the group is going down, the kibbutz is becoming more and more central instead, and there's a lot of cultural activities and social actions that the kibbutz is taken as a kibbutz, not as the movement like before, as kvutzot habchira, as they used to be, but just as a kibbutz. I'm not sure how my time is going. Can I still go back and forth with the shares or just talk it?
No, you have time. It's okay.
Okay, so I will show you some of the cultural activities, let's say like in Sukkot. It's quite annoying that it doesn't do the share thing itself. Sukkot in the kibbutz, it was 8 Sukkot because of the corona, and also because the size of the kibbutz, they decided to do 8 Sukkot. So you can see there's 1, 2, 3, there's 8 all over, and you can see that it's not necessarily by group, but just by friends with different ages, and the families were invited, and they were sitting in all sorts of different small places, and they had the same ceremony with the same pages, but divided to small groups just by friends. And that's something that, like, as we said, the Zionist, non-religious Judaism is very important, and it's still carrying on and taking a lot of their daily, the yearly routine is by that. The social activities are also by the kibbutz. We will see it later when we are talking about the town. The engagement in the youth movement changed completely from being young people that were in the blue shirts a lot and doing a lot of things together as part of the movement. Some people are staying in very central position in the movement, and most of the people are just doing other things that they consider important in Israeli society that have nothing to do with the youth movement or the adult movement. From the formal education, before they were young and their kids, they had babies, now their kids are in a school. That school is right a walking distance from the house. The school belonged to the town and belonged to the state. And they started as part-time teachers that did all sorts of experiments in the school. And now they manage the school itself. And again, I'm going to share and jump from one place to another. The school it does everything that a state school is supposed to, but it's just a minute, I'm just going to find the right share. Sorry. ממש הורס את הקצב. As I said, the school in the neighborhood is a very, very mixed school. You will have the kibbutz kids school that come from quite a strong background with educated parents, and you will have kids from broken families, from Muslim and Christian Arabs, and you have kids from a lot of different immigrants backgrounds, and now they also have Ukrainian refugees. One of the unique things that the school does, there's a lot of unique things that the school does, but just one of them is called the imagination room. And in the imagination room, those kids that some of them, like I said, that come from quite struggling backgrounds, are being taught how to play and how to imagine. And there's no screens allowed, which of course gets the kids quite stressed. But they give them toys that they don't necessarily have at home. And you can see here some photos from what they do, and that's one of the kids that doing immigration. and you can see they're doing a lot of craft. And you can see what's going on. You can see a Ukrainian flag on I would say it's like some kind of a shelter that the kids built. There's a lot of Ukrainian flags now in the imagination, no? Because they can do anything they want. And as I said, it's quite unique that they are able to give it to their kids. The city that was not part of the circles at all in the beginning is now their own. They are part of it. Some of them work in different organizations that belong to the city council, and they are involved in planning. They are involved in one of the, they built an organization to promote cooperation between Jews and Arabs in the city, and we will see it a bit later. Oh, I think it was before, I can go back to it. Yeah. Just a minute. This is Abustan. It's a shared community organization of Jews and Arabs. As you can see in the photo, they do a lot of activities together for Jews and Arabs in the city. When in this last summer, there was really big bushfires around the city and people had to evacuate. And because that organization been working for 2 years, it enabled Jewish people and Arab people that before that have nothing to do with each other to work together to evacuate parts of the city to other parts of the city, host them in Arab's hotel for nothing, and so on. And it really helps to stabilize the city in those times. In May last year, when there were riots, they had a lot of demonstration together for peace, and they are really changing the atmosphere in the city. Sorry, I lost the share again. The country, the dissonance after 16 years of the amount of time they're getting older, the dissonance is becoming more obvious between the values and what they believed and what's actually going on in the country, and sometimes in the movement. קבוצות הבחירה, the movement that I researched originally, joined together with מחנות העולים, a bigger movement. קבוצות הבחירה had a very clear values, such as staying inside the green line, but the מחנות העולים have another kibbutz outside the green line, and you just have to live with that. You have to accept that dissonance and talk it out and find solution or not find solution, and they're dealing with that. Also with the whole country going more and more right-wing, and they need to be more and more realistic about the gaps between the values and what they can actually achieve. And with age, you become maybe disillusioned in a way, and it's part of, you know, I will do what I can, even if it's not what I wanted to do. The changes in values around the world affect the values and social actions that the group takes. The values still stayed exactly the same values, but some conversation that didn't happen 13 years ago, like gender issues, gay rights, all the Me Too movement with sexual harassment and what it means, all of that is now part of the conversation that happens inside the movement, and more people it's okay to come out inside your kibbutz. It's okay to live openly gay, and those things were not so obvious 12 years ago. We can see, I'm just getting very tired of jumping from one chair to the next. So I will just talk to you about the refugee situation. I will do it anyway. They had, in the center of Israel, they had students in the youth movements from refugee families. And now those students were forced to leave Israel, and they are still trying to take care of them. So we can see in the Tikkun site that we saw before, we can see the activities, they call it at the edge of light. Those kids from South Sudan and were sent to Uganda, and they live in a refugee camp in Uganda, and they find the money and the time to go to them and spend time with them and do activities with them in Uganda again. Those kids that they were teaching before in Israel. So we have these activities with refugees, and we saw the activities with refugees inside Israel, and Orna showed us before the activities they taking place in other places in the world. I'm going back to my presentation, and I hope. So we went through all the circles, and now there's other kinds of other consequences of getting older. We're getting older, we need more health insurance, we're thinking about the future more. We have kids that are almost joining the army, we have kids with more and more financial needs, and we're still living in a kibbutz. So they are thinking about that, which is quite unique for young kibbutzim. And they have a retirement payments funds, they have insurances, and they even have a fund allocated for psychological treatments. They allow various career paths, like I said before, if you want to go and study something and fulfill yourself, as long as you don't become a terrible capitalist, I think. And even that, like the kibbutz itself have a software company, because many people, after so many years of working as guides, working with youth, working with people, just need some break. And it's a good way to support the kibbutz and get some extra money. Another thing that happened with the years and with the less willingness to work in non-professional jobs inside the kibbutz himself is that they need to hire outside help to work with their own kids. Like in the summer, you need a guide to work in the summer camp with the kibbutz kids, and they find somebody else that they know, but is not from the movement and not from the kibbutz, to come and work with their kids. So what's next? The kibbutz closed its gate many years ago. I think 9-10 years ago, the kibbutz said that they are not accepting any new members, and you can only get into the kibbutz if you get as a partner of a kibbutz member. And they also don't push their kids necessarily to be in the Machanot Olim, to be in the same movement. So it's basically a one generational experiment of intentional community. And they're talking about it and thinking about it. Should they open their gates again? Should they receive new members again? They closed the kibbutz because they didn't want to be in constant conversation about the shape of the kibbutz and their values and about their activities. And by their beliefs, if they bring in new people, they will have to do those conversations all over again. It's a lot of hard work, and every time you have new young people coming with all their energies, you will have to start over again. So this is a question mark, how they're going to do. Like Right now, the ages are between 40 and 53, I think. The kids are getting older, so that's a question mark. Another question mark is where are they going? They used to live in the city property for new immigrants, and now after 5 years, the lease is up and they need to move out. So there is a discussion, should they move to a kibbutz? Should they move out of the city? What will happen if they move out of the city? What will happen to the unity? What will happen to the social actions? They had a committee for, I think, for at least 5 years, that committee was sitting and talking and looking for different solutions. Right now, it seems that they are trying to get funds to build themselves suitable homes inside the city, but it's still not decided. So there's a lot of open questions about the future of this single intentional community that I research. That's it.
Thank you very much, Viren. So we're just about ending our time. So if anyone has a very, very short question to Vered, Alon, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's good now. You're good. Well,
Yeah. Okay.
okay. Very hello. Very interesting. And I wanted to ask, what is your main conclusion for this very interesting gap of 12 years? Because you talk about some changes, but what is your really main conclusion regarding this special community?
One of the conclusion is, and it's not just about them, it's a very general conclusion about activities or trying to bring social change, is if you don't know what you want, if your values are not clear for you, you won't be able to take a step in that direction. I think what I spoke about, the gaps between reality that keep going more and more right-wing in Israel and the values is causing a bit of an issue with being able to bring social change the way they thought that they will be able 12 years ago. There used to be a talk about kibbutz kvutzot, about doing like a lot of little groups around the city and having like to gain more and more power, but it seems like those new groups each have a slightly different values, slightly different interests, and it's not becoming a stronger and stronger power that can bring those changes to Israel. I don't think that they're dispirited, but they are like, you know, disillusioned, like I said before. The activities are more in where they can work, they can change things in the school, they can change things in with the refugees. They do what they can, but changing the political regime is something that, you know, we are staying like it seems impossible right now.
Okay, thank you very, very. I will just want to conclude with two thoughts I had during the three very interesting presentations. And I think it's relevant to, those 2 points are relevant for our joint interest in communal life. The first is the relationship between the communal life of each group and social activism. Whether the social activism strengthens a communal life, or whether communal life enable doing social activism. So this is the first question, and I think it's interesting to think about it. And the other one is the advantages of, I think it's connected to the question that Alon Gan has raised to Doron. the advantages of the ability to do social activities between three stages of communal organizations: individual commune, net of communes, and communes that are part of movement. It seems like being part of a large movement giving you a lot of advantages regarding social change, and I think it's also another point that is interesting to think about. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a great time there in Denmark. I'm jealous, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Liv.
Bye.
And I'm off on here, you'll need to end recording the meeting.
אני צילמתי, אני אשלח לך בוואטסאפ, ניר.
מאה אחוז, תודה.
ביי.
ביי.